Welcome back to How a Realist Hero Built the Kingdom, Anime Review Episode 15. This is reviewing the 15th episode of the anime, which is basically Becoming Good Friends Who Never Offend. This episode finishes adapting Chapter 3 of Book 3 and goes through pretty much the entirety of Chapter 4 of Book 3. Yep, it does. Which I found that to be interesting. The fact that it basically finishes one chapter and starts and basically goes to another one. Yep. Now, if you're curious though, with this episode, they're roughly about halfway through Book 3. Yes, they're halfway through Book 3, and this is only the third episode they've actually covered this one in. You're thinking, really? Well, technically, yes, that is definitely true. Mm-hmm. Yes, this is the very third episode in a row they're on Book 3 because they technically finished. Actually, no, scratch that. This actually is the fourth episode because they actually did start adapting this book with episode 12, which was the Pendulum episode of Cur 1. And the last two episodes of that basically started out the book, and here we're already halfway through the book in just 4 episodes. It's not bad for a book that's roughly over 200 pages. About 250. So, with this one, now they do finish this up. Now, there is stuff cut from the episode, yes. There is a big chunk of a conversation cut. There is also bits and pieces of another conversation cut here. But my guess is they probably cut that some lines here. Time. That's probably the reason why. But beginning to end, Book 4, not Book 4, Chapter 4 is mostly everything is there, except for one section and a couple lines here and there, which is good. I don't mind that at all. So we start off basically with, we have Sotoma, Lucia, Aisha, and Haku, and Genie moving into Sotoma's office. Now, there's actually a bit of conversation cut out here. What conversation was cut out? You might ask. There was a conversation about Sotoma's bed being in the office. You can clearly see it in the anime. But the thing is, none of the characters ever mention it. Like, of course, Jeannie brought up in the book that apparently Maria, her sister, does the same thing. And they completely cut this out of the anime. And I think, when I was reading it, there's no mention this happened in the book when I was reading it. But Lucia in the anime is actually seen taking notes. In the book, they don't mention her taking notes, but I'm not all that surprised given the fact she's going to be future queen of the country, so of course take notes. And Haku is there simply because he's the country's prime minister. So, and there's one big conversation they do keep in the anime, which I thought was very important. It was a proposal of having Sotoma go to the king, go to the empire, to become Maria's spouse and becoming the prime minister and giving the throne back to Albert. And of course, Lucia and Initia were offended by this. And of course, so told him, calm down, Lucia. And Lucia, stay. And yeah, this whole little wild proposal that they said to make during this conversation, that is straight from the book. From what I can tell, there is nothing changed about it. My guess is the reason why they kept that in because that was important. And my guess is also the reason why the JC staff decided to keep that in is because if they didn't, they would be called on because this is a very important part of the conversation. But I think it's weird that they didn't bring it to bed. Yes. So they detail stuff basically. A lot of the conversation is pretty much intact. There's also conversation about racism. Well, at least discrimination mostly. Now, this conversation, from what I can tell, this discussion anyways, is word from word, straight from the book. There's a couple bits that do cut from here, like the stuff about the Dark Elves. They cut that out here, probably because basically it was really necessary. And the conversation that Sotoma has no problem with Dark Elves or an Orthodox woman. They do have a minor change here, where in the book, basically, there's a mention about like the monster conversation is actually changed from Sotoma's thoughts to him actually speaking it, because he mentions in his thoughts about Quitakao, who was a character, also a character who popped up in the show Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, which so happened that I met the main voice actor today for that one. And they do bring that up in the anime, which of course in the book that was mentioned in his thoughts. In the anime seldom spoken out loud. That's a minor change. And discussion about also possibly forming a secret alliance. That is brought up in the anime, which, yes, this is happening in the book too, so don't worry, the anime did not make that up. Let's see. There's also discussion from... excuse me. They don't exactly answer the question of why Sultan didn't join the... why he didn't sign the Mankind document. Mankind Declaration. There's... the book barely brings it up at all. The anime doesn't answer the question at all. They do bring up why King Albert didn't sign it, because he was indecisive. That's generally how his rule was. He was very indecisive. He had no idea what to do, which is generally true, except when it comes to matters of being married to a very beautiful woman and having a very beautiful daughter. Aside from that, when it comes to ruling, he was very indecisive about that. So, yeah, that's straight from the book, so there's not really change there. And then, after a long time, I'd say this conversation between the five of them has been going on for at least for several hours. Oh, by the way, they do cut the bit out here of Serena when she comes back and mentions to Julius that Serena was supposed to be training Julius. Now, I should point out that in the book, this bit of conversation was here, but in the anime, they cut that. Time was probably the reason why. But I keep going back to the bed thing. That was really big of a conversation. That took up like 3 pages of a conversation, and they cut that for some reason. Do not know why, but they do. They also bring up something that happened 10 years prior to the series about like stuff with monsters. They also bring up the fact of the demon lord's name, Davilo, and Soto thinks that he think have heard the name before. Either he read about it or he heard the name once before. And then he's like, so losing contact. And this we finally see Serena in the episode. Despite the fact in the book, she actually had once prior to this, which they cut that out of the anime. Then we have the episode end with Sotoma not going to his bed in this office, but going to a bed in the guest room, in another room. Now, Jeannie herself is offered a guest room in this castle, which I think is supposed to be... I think this is probably supposed to be in the capital of Free. It's not really clear exactly where this is, but it could be there. But the thing is, it's presumably probably the same place before, but it's not really very clear because the castle looks exactly the same, both in Afridia and Armenia. And I mentioned about Armenia as one who basically started the conflict, which yes, they did, and also the fact of returning to Van, there's concessions, and negotiations basically are going smoothly. And just overall, pretty good episode. You can kind of say that this episode just moved at a slow pace, and this episode was lots of talking and barely any action. Which, that's indeed true. It's like that. But the thing is, the book is like that too. So you should not blame the JC staff for basically having the episode move at a slow pace. Like, if you don't like the bureaucrat stuff that goes on this episode, also they did bring up the Star Dragon Range, which is an actual location in the books. And they mentioned about like expanding the border. Basically, there's a bit of that bit of conversation. That's the setup for the next couple books. Basically, it's set up for the Star Mountain Range. That's set up for book 6. And the whole thing with the going to our countries, that's set up for later books. So, good on the anime for basically setting up stuff that happens in later books. Yes, great the fact they kept that in, because... excuse me. Sometimes sometimes light novels would do this without foreshadow stuff early on. Mushoku Tenshin, from what I can tell, did do some foreshadowing, but in the final episode of Cur 2, they did foreshadow several books of the series. Several books. Which is so good they kept that in, because if you basically keep that plot thread in from the book, which sets up other books, that means you have more people coming back to see if it actually happens. And if you don't foreshadow it, then you're like, wait, when the heck was it? When the heck they say I do this? Oh, they basically did this before. So before we set this up here, we plant seeds here for later stuff. In my opinion, that's good storytelling. I've I've always enjoyed that when it comes to storytelling. It doesn't happen a lot in, let's say, you can't really tell this when it comes to American TV shows very much, because a lot of the time, if it's not, let's say, a show that has like a plot that spreads a whole season, unless it's like that, you're basically getting a show that's basically a series of one-shot episodes and just having a random finale to end the season. Despite that, because there's great storytelling every episode. But in the case of shows like this is this type of show that certain people like me can get into. I mean, yes, the whole thing with the bureaucracy stuff basically might make you put to sleep. But here's the thing. I like the way the anime presents this. There's been education in this series, and you get a little more information basically on the real world. Which, in my opinion, is actually really good, smart for the anime to do that. Now, yes, they do this in the book too, so don't worry. It's not like completely. Now, of course, they do have an explanation at the start of the episode about the origins of the Mankind Declaration. That may be from another chapter because I did look it up at the start of book 2. Well, a lot of narration they had for the first Cur up until like the last few episodes. That was actually from chapter 1 of book 2. Yes. This may be from the later book, I don't know, but nice little setup for there. Yep. But yeah, that's going to be it for this particular review. Stay tuned for the very next review. It's going to be a review of the newest episode of Case Closed. Okay? Next video. Bye.